Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting of September 15, 2015. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Madam President, Supervisor Avalos.
Here.
Avalos present. Supervisor Breed.
Here.
Breed present. Supervisor Campos.
Present.
Campos present. Supervisor Christensen.
Here.
Christensen present. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen present. Supervisor Farrell.
Present.
Farrell present. Supervisor Kim. Kim present. Supervisor Marr.
Here.
Marr present. Supervisor Tang.
Present.
Tang present. Supervisor Wiener.
Present.
Wiener present. Supervisor Yee.
Present.
Yee present. Madam President, all members are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of America, one nation under God,
indivisible, with
Liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
I have none today, Madam President.
Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call the first item?
Yes, the first item of business is the policy discussion between the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee and the Board of Supervisors. The Mayor may provide initial remarks for up to 5 minutes. The President will recognize Supervisor Christensen, who submitted a question from District 3. The Supervisor...
Oh, sorry.
There may be follow-up questions asked as long as the entire discussion does not exceed 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and welcome, Mayor Ed Lee. Do you have opening remarks at this time?
I do. And thank you again, President Breed and supervisors and guests to our City Hall. Supervisors, welcome back from your recess. I know you're all eager to get to work, and I'd like to use my time today to talk about how we are working every day to keep our city more affordable, and that's our laser focus on housing that's affordable to low and middle income families. We are using this time of prosperity in our city to make sure every resident benefits. We have already together raised the minimum wage for our city. We've made Muni free for low-income kids, for seniors and people with disabilities, and we've invested in our public schools, the great equalizer, to make sure our kids succeed. But providing affordable housing to low-income families is an essential part of our affordability challenge that we must solve. And even though we have a housing crisis that's decades in the making, we must act decisively together now to make sure that families stay in their homes and get access to an affordable one. Well, that's why last year, 2014, I announced a pretty aggressive housing plan. Build and rehabilitate 30,000 homes by 2020 and guaranteeing that one-third of them be permanently affordable to low-income families and additional homes on top of that for middle-income families. We're making tremendous progress with perhaps the most housing we've ever seen built in our city since the Great Earthquake, but we need to do more. And that's why we last week launched, with many of you, a blueprint to build an additional 10,000 homes, more than 10,000. And while we set the ambitious goal of 10,000 affordable homes, with this package of legislation for the first time, we have a clear blueprint to meet, and I believe that we will exceed the goal of 10,000 permanently affordable units by 2020. Well, working together, the board and the mayor, I'm championing a legislative package of 5 key policies and programs that will help us reach our affordable housing goals. We are together fixing public housing, no more poverty housing, but we'll rehab 1,400 public housing units in 15 different sites in just phase 1 of our public housing rehab. We're giving existing residents a priority for affordable homes built in their communities through our neighborhood preference program. We're helping tenants who lost their homes through an Ellis Act eviction or a no-fault eviction and who had to leave a below market rate with a displaced tenant's preference. My thanks to Supervisors Christensen, to Breed, to Cohen, and to all the supervisors for your support and work on this legislation. We are revamping our inclusionary housing program by incentivizing developers to provide affordable units alongside market rate units. I, along with Supervisors Farrell, will introduce legislation today to create more 100% affordable housing developments entirely funded by the private sector and incentivize developers to provide affordable units at a greater range of income levels on their private projects. And for the first time in our city's history, this package will allow private developers to help us secure housing for families in rent-controlled units and stabilize their rent at permanently affordable levels. Finally, we are incentivizing developers to build projects that have low income, middle income, and market rate ones side by side with our affordable housing bonus program. So I'm excited about the package of legislation that will be introduced today, and hopefully we will all work together to make sure that we ramp up our affordable housing production with our city's resources and with the private sector investments. But if we talk about homes, we'll also need to talk about homelessness. And so I'm eager to get to Supervisor Christensen's question for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your opening remarks. Now I'd like to recognize the supervisor from District 3, Supervisor Julie Christensen, with her question for the mayor today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, good afternoon. So I thought today would be a good opportunity just to take a look at the homelessness issue. I know it affects all the districts of our city. Our count of homeless persons is up 27% in District 3. There's been some talk about impending celebrations that might be occurring, but this is a day-to-day fact for a lot of folks in the district, and I thought this would be just an opportunity to talk about how your office is addressing the issue specifically in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Christensen. You've asked a question that's been on my mind every day and on the minds of all San Franciscans, and I'm sure each of your colleagues the same thing, as we all try to offer hope to people who are living on our streets. Well, because of smart investments, there's no doubt that our city has already changed many lives for the better. In fact, through housing or family reunification, the city has helped more than 19,000 people leave the streets, with nearly 11,000 moving into supportive housing since 2004. And we are making progress in better serving homeless veterans, families, and youth. In fact, we expect and we will end chronic homelessness for veterans in San Francisco by the end of this year, and we'll continue to make progress on family homelessness and youth. However, even with the strongest social safety net that we've all worked together, and I think we're proud of it here in San Francisco, we know that we must do more because we still have too many homeless people suffering on our streets and too many people unable to make the choices they need to save their own lives because of mental health and substance abuse. We have relaunched the Homeless Outreach Team with over 55 members to directly engage with people on the streets and give them care, direct care. We have integrated a 311 reservation system for shelter beds so that no one has to wait in line, long lines, to even get shelter. And we're using innovative approaches like rapid rehousing, reversing an historic spike in family homelessness, and cutting the shelter wait list by more than 50%. I worked with many of you on these historic investments, but the one that I'm most excited about is our innovative Navigation Center. We started a mere 5 months ago and already have helped 200 people, homeless San Franciscans, change their lives. And we're committed to continuing this model, increasing it and multiplying it. Many of you joined me last week when we announced an additional $3 million to double down on our efforts to serve our street homeless residents after an anonymous donor got the center going, along with our Interfaith Council. We can't do it alone, and we all know this. We will need more donors, and I joined the supervisors to ask the private sector to step up so that we can continue to provide 24/7 counselors to intake new clients, provide meals, safe shelter, and connect homeless people with social services. That's why we're starting the Navigation Partnerships Fund. This will raise, hopefully, another $3 million or more, and money will be deposited into this fund with the Comptroller's Office to match our city government spending. We know there is much hard work in front of us to solve this, and I'm willing to work with the board to make sure that we have a more robust answer to the mental health and behavioral challenges of people on our streets. I look forward to working with you, Supervisor, and with each of the supervisors to make sure we're working together to create and continue our focus on this homelessness problem in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here today. Now, at this time, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent agenda?
Items 2 through 5 comprise the consent calendar. These items are considered routine. If a member objects, an item may be removed and considered separately.
Okay, seeing no names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 2 through 5, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr. Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, these items are finally passed and approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, item number 6, please.
Item 6 is an ordinance to amend the planning code to clarify that the inclusionary affordable housing program applies to housing projects, including group housing projects, changing certain requirements in certain circumstances to allow affordable on-site units in group housing projects to be exempt from density calculations in certain circumstances. For on-site units in group housing projects to be priced as 75% of the maximum purchase price for studio units if the bedrooms are less than 350 square feet, and to clarify the requirements for designated units in certain C3 districts under Section 124F to affirm the Planning Department CEQA determination and to make other appropriate findings.
Colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item 7, please.
Item 7 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to require the sheriff and the police department to gather and regularly report data regarding detentions and traffic stops.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is finally passed unanimously. Item 8, please.
Item 8 is an ordinance to amend the administrative code to rename the Disaster Recovery Fund as the San Francisco Disaster Recovery, Emergency Response and Recovery Fund, to designate it as a Category 8 fund and specify how the city may use the fund.
Supervisor Tang.
Thank you, President Breed. So today I am introducing, or we have legislation before us. As you know, currently we have a San Francisco Disaster Recovery Fund. And today this legislation would be amending it so that not only would it be for disaster recovery, but also for emergency response purposes. This legislation would also designate the fund as a Category 8 fund. And in particular, my intention for this legislation is so that we can expeditiously provide funding if there is an emergency situation in San Francisco quickly, especially these are funds specifically from private donors who decide that they would like to donate money to the city for particular purposes. We would also be expanding the fund to include 4 categories. One would designate, a donor could designate that they would like to donate money for public infrastructure and repair or replacement, or for emergency housing and relief, or for helping animals, or it would be helping, if you don't designate, the city administrator's office will be responsible for determining the allocation of the fund. In Budget Committee, we had amended the legislation so that not only is the city administrator's office and the controller's office completing a report as to how much funds we are getting and also how we are spending the funds, but they would actually have to submit an annual report to both the mayor and the board of supervisors regarding the uses and sources of the funds. In addition, we amended the legislation such that the Controller's Office shall also include the disaster and emergency response and recovery fund sources and uses in its quarterly budget status report. So really, the overall intention of this legislation is to allow us as a city to be able to obtain funds from private donors in the event of an emergency for quicker disaster recovery, but also for emergency response, and to not have to go through a board process in order to do so. Oftentimes in emergencies, we need to be able to provide funding very quickly. So this is what this legislation is intended to do. To date, we have only received $546, comprising 19 donations. That is between November 2011 and July 2013. And so, and to date, no expenditures have been made from this fund. So we hope that by changing the way this fund is structured, that we're able to better be ready to accept private donations and to help those in need during times of emergency. So with that, colleagues, I hope you'll support the legislation as is. We have our Controller's Office staff here ready to answer any particular questions you may have. I know that there may have been some concerns about transparency and how we're spending the funds. So I do want to give our Deputy City Controller, Todd Riedstrom, an opportunity to speak to that, if that's okay through the chair.
Yes.
So good afternoon, Todd Riedstrom, Deputy Controller. I'd like to wish you a happy National Disaster Preparedness Month, the month of September. And so the item before you today, as highlighted by Supervisor Tang, is really a piece of legislation that does go to the next step as far as being prepared in responsiveness as well as recovery efforts. And much like you've already done in your legislation for Chapter 21 as well as Chapter 6 for public works contracting, this is the complement on the private donation side in particular. And so if there are particular questions, happy to answer them. There are the additional reporting and transparency items as mentioned by Supervisor Tang with the quarterly reporting back to you, and our office is happy to answer any further questions that you have at any time.
Thank you. Supervisor Tang, is there anything else? Thank you. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you very much. Appreciate Supervisor Tang's legislation here to make it easier for people to help out in emergency situations. While I support the intent of this resolution and deeply care about San Francisco being prepared in case of an emergency, I also understand, that as Supervisor Tang mentioned, there hasn't been really a whole lot of funds collected through this mechanism. And of course, if we collect a few thousand here and there, that'd be great if we could get to that point. But I also know that when you have huge disasters, and a lot of times, whether you read it in the news all the time, whether you want to go back to Katrina, where there was a lot of donation and nobody knew what happened to the funding, or to other international situations, even in the Loma Prieta quake, there was donations that were unaccounted for. When it comes to huge disasters, the donations itself by private donors usually come in after the fact that we as a city or a state or federal government will react to the situation. So part of what I want to do is amend this because, and again, I don't think it's going to really have that much impact unless it's a major disaster, that I would like us to not totally give away our fiduciary responsibility in having a check and balance here. And that if we were indeed to have anything over 100,000, and 500 is very far from 100,000, that the boards would have to approve the expenditure, anything that's over 100,000. Again, I don't think it's going to have much impact in terms of things like the fire and the mission, for instance. If 100,000 would pay for about 130 victims for the three nights at $256 a night at a hotel. So I'm asking support for this amendment so that we don't give up our fiduciary responsibility as for the supervisors.
So Supervisor Yee has made a motion to approve an amendment that he circulated to the members of the board. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything that Supervisor Yee just stated, and I do believe in transparency and accountability for even private donations, not just city funds, but again, private donors who are trying to contribute to disaster recovery emergency response. I unfortunately, respectfully, would disagree with the amendment. I think it actually does defeat the purpose of why we're doing this in the first place, because we are actually trying to bypass the board process only in the case of an emergency, again, for nothing else. That is actually why I proposed the amendments about the reporting annually, as well as the quarterly report that the Controller's Office would have to provide to us. But speaking to that concern, I do want to ask the Controller's Office if you can just let us know what types of internal controls there are in terms of spending. Again, we don't have much experience with this. However, I do know that there are internal controls in place as to how funding would be doled out if private donors decided to give to the city.
Todd Riedstrom, Deputy Controller. This is a matter of balancing the fiduciary responsibility as well as the internal controls, and specifically on the internal controls. When donations are provided to the city, they are separately accounted for and tracked, and so the proposed legislation does specifically tell the controller, as well as the city administrator's office, how it can very limitedly spend those funds, and so that's one of the delegations that you would have as presently drafted. Additionally, with that required transparency and reporting, you're going to hear from us when we give you the quarterly budget updates of all the sources, all the uses for that fund, as well as annually a full accounting of all sources and uses. And so, while I know the amount before you today that you've seen, roughly $500 in donations, very thankfully, we have not had a major earthquake event since 1989. We have not had thousands of people displaced or more displacements because of major earthquakes or other disasters. So this will be a matter of where you feel comfortable delegating us with the oversight, as well as the city administrator's office. The allocation of the funds, while coordinated through City Administrator's Office, is in consultation with our office, as well as Department of Emergency Management and the Mayor's Office. So there are those internal controls in place that we would be accountable to you.
Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. First, I wanted to, well, good afternoon, everyone. Supervisor Yee, I don't have your amendments. Is this is your amendment? Okay,
on the
thank
third
you.
Page.
Thank you very much. What page?
Page 3.
Thank you. I do have a question for clarification. I think it's for you, Mr. Riedstrom. On page 1, line 22, or line 21 at the end, it says the San Francisco Disaster and Emergency Response and Recovery Fund is a Category 8 fund. Could you tell me what is a Category 8 fund? Thank you.
So a Category 8 fund specifically is allowed under the Administrative Code insofar as the appropriation or spending of that money is allowed without coming back to you first as the board for approval. In this specific case, though, the legislation narrowly defines how it can be spent into those 4 express categories. And so in this case, the legislation gives the automatic appropriation, but also at the same time narrowly defines how it can be spent and under what process and administration it can be spent. And in this case, it's non-public money coming for a specific donor-designated purpose to help out in an emergency response or recovery effort. So it specifically is auto appropriation. It allows the donor's money to accrue interest in the event it remains unspent, as well as to carry forward and to be spent later or in a subsequent fiscal year if an emergency crosses over fiscal years or is a multi-month emergency.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, Supervisor Yee has made a motion to approve the amendments. It was seconded by Supervisor Avalos. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the vote? Oh, I don't see your name on the roster.
Here.
Supervisor Campos.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a question through the chair to Supervisor Tang, through the author. What would be the concern if we pass the amendment that Supervisor Yee introduced? It seems like it provides more transparency and more oversight. So I'm just wondering I want to understand what the concern is.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think as I stated in my opening comments, the whole purpose of this legislation is so that if private donors want to make a donation to the city for emergency response, that we can dole out that funding for whatever the emergency is in a timely fashion, have the flexibility to do that. If you were to adopt the amendment, I understand the concern for transparency, but if we were to adopt the amendment, it essentially really does away with what this legislation is all about, which is only for the purposes of an emergency would we be doling out this funding, and again, from private donors. I'm not, generally speaking, a fan of Category 8 funds and setting new ones up, but for the event of an emergency, I believe that it's something that is appropriate. And like Mr. Riedstrom said from the Comptroller's Office, I think that there are a lot of internal controls to make sure that the funds are only spent within those 4 categories that we lay out in this legislation.
Okay. Supervisor Campos, anything else? Okay, thank you. Seeing no other names on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the amendment?
Supervisor Cohen.
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, no. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
No.
Marr, no. Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Wiener.
No.
Wiener, no. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
No.
Breed, no. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
No.
Christensen, no. There are 4 ayes and 7 noes, with Supervisors Cohen, Farrell, Marr, Tang, Wiener, Supervisor Breed, and Christensen in the dissent.
Okay, the amendment fails. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the item?
On item.
Oh, sorry. Supervisor Yee?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that I do appreciate the intent. And again, I didn't think that we're going to ever, well, we may reach 100,000 at one point. I'm going to be voting no on this, not because of I don't agree with the intent, but I want to make a statement that we should be taking fiduciary responsibility on this item. And if we're going to be fiscally responsible, we need to make a decision to do that and not back off of that.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on the item?
On item 8, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim.
Aye.
Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
No.
Yee, no. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, no. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
No.
Campos, no. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 8 ayes and 3 noes, with Supervisors Yee, Avalos, and Campos in the dissent.
Okay, this ordinance passes on the first reading. Madam Clerk, it is now past 2:30, and I know that we have 2 commendations. And so at this time, I'd like to call on Supervisor Farrow for our first commendation.
Okay, thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, so today it's pretty rare, I think, that we get to honor people that have done amazing things that we could never even imagine doing here at the board. This summer, I remember watching TV and hearing this crazy idea that there was a woman who was attempting to swim from the Farallon Islands all the way to the city of San Francisco without a wetsuit, and she was going to do it straight without, I think, even touching her boat or anybody else alongside, and then, of course, saw all the news coverage of her making that successful swim. And then, as I was mentioning to her, I was with my wife and our children this summer in the car and listened to an NPR interview of her amazing encounter and her life story. And I am just so in awe of everything she's accomplished, not just this summer. I think that's probably the latest culmination of relatively short history here in swimming. But anyways, today we're honoring Kimberly Chambers, who became the first woman in the world this summer to swim from the Farallon Islands to the city of San Francisco. So come on up, Kimberly, to the podium. So to put this in context, this is a swim of 30 miles of shark-infested water. As some of my friends mentioned to me, or as we were talking, and quite frankly I concurred, I said the idea of proactively jumping into shark-infested waters where they're known to eat in the Farallon Islands in the dark seems a bit of a crazy idea, but it was nothing but an admiration that everyone continues to talk about it. She did this feat in 17 hours and 12 minutes, which is unbelievable. So I want to talk a little bit of background, just mention it for everyone about your background. In 2007, she suffered an accident where doctors gave her a less than 1% chance of walking again unassisted on her own. And a former rower at Berkeley and a ballerina, she spent 2 years rehabilitating her leg and started swimming, was it 5 years ago?
6 years ago.
6 years ago, for the first time since primary school.
Yes.
So to think first hopping in the water 6 years ago, really, out of, building a foundation for what you did is so incredible. She's a proud member of the night trained swimmers who are here, all the group here. I know Bob Tandler and some other folks that are here. I should mention also Simon, who's there with them, and I got to meet earlier, was the man earlier this year that swam from San Francisco to the Farallon Islands and only had to get pulled out of the water because there were sharks circling around him. And he was just a few miles away from the finish of that swim. Again, something I could never imagine doing. But in any case, in 2012, some more history here. She joined a number of swimmers on a relay team from San Francisco to Santa Barbara, swimming day and night, and they were forced to stop the swim after swimming 181 miles. And they, despite that, raised over $1 million for charity in that event. On September 2nd of last year, she successfully swam the Northern Ireland to Scotland North Channel, which was her 7th of the Ocean 7 swim, which is unbelievable, all that you've done. She's been nominated for so many Women of the Year awards, which is unbelievable, a member of the South End and Dolphin Rowing Clubs here in the city of San Francisco. I guess technically in District 2, although Supervisor Christensen is right nearby, and we were actually talking about it earlier today. But you, I want you to know, first of all, how amazed so many of us are at what you did. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. On behalf of everyone here, congratulations for sure, and to your entire team. I know after hearing that interview, I realized what a team effort that is. And to the sponsors that sponsored you and hearing that story, what an amazing collective story of a group effort and you personally, an individual. But also, I want to make sure you know, and I think I mentioned it earlier, you probably didn't set out to do it on purpose, but I have a 9-year-old daughter who's on the swim team, and the example that you have set and letting young women know, especially who are swimmers, of things that they can accomplish if they put their mind to it, this is obviously beyond most everyone's dreams, but it's really incredible. So congratulations to you, and the floor is yours, and thank you, and congrats for all that you've done.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Supervisor Farrell, Madam President, and members of the board. I'm tremendously honoured to be here. I'm trying really hard not to cry because none of this is sunk in, and you don't do these swims for the accolades. They're not athletic events. They're these very personal journeys of a self-transformation. I was in a situation with an injury, 1% chance of ever walking unassisted again. I was 30 minutes from amputation, and it took me 2 years to walk again. And swimming has really put me on this path of the self-discovery, of realizing my dreams and realizing that, we are all capable of far more than we think we are. And it starts with community. And I am tremendously proud to have the support of my friends in San Francisco, the swim clubs, the Dolphin Club, the South End Rowing Club, and most of all, my night trained swimmer team who are here behind me. And, everyone has encouraged me to dream big, even if you're afraid of it. And to my mind, the rewards far outweigh the risks. And to make these swims bigger than yourself, to do them for charity, is something that I've learned from one of my mentors, the co-founder of Night Train Swimmers, who I'd just like to take a moment to introduce. His name's Vito Biala.
Thank you. Okay, I'll say a couple of things here. First of all, you probably didn't know that the Farallon Islands belong to San Francisco. It's within the city code, and you actually own that real estate, and you have to abide by the rules and regulations of the city of San Francisco. So in the early 1930s, people started talking about, well, why don't we swim to San Francisco? And they toyed with that idea. They used to eat ham sandwiches and drink brandy about halfway. None of them made it. Then in 1967, Ted Erickson actually made it, and he was the first to do that. So we had one, Colonel Evans swam to Bolinas, then Ted Erickson made it. He actually tried 3 times, and once he didn't make it. Second time he died. He was legally dead for 18 seconds. They revived him. Third time he actually made it. So the dream, what Kim was thinking about was like, wouldn't it be great if a woman could do that? So, and just to add San Francisco has been a city of pioneers. The gold rush days, no limits, always test whatever you can think of and dream of. We've always been proactive, and the city of San Francisco is so cool and so neat. And what I'll leave you with this is that history is being made right now. So 20 years from now, you'll say, well, yeah, I was at City Hall when they honored Kim Chambers, and it's like, my God, oh my God, that went so fast. This is history in the making. It's like a first person flying to the moon or doing something or flying across the Atlantic. This is Kim Chambers. And not to forget Simon, who laid the groundwork. He actually showed her the road map. He swam, 3 miles short when the big fin came around, and I said, you're out of the water, come on. And he was bleeding from his neck on down because he was chafing. He forgot to shave that morning. He was so nervous. But big hand for Simon. Yeah, Simon. Okay? All right. I'll leave it with that. Kim, your turn. Thank you.
No, so thank you once again. I'm just tremendously honored to be here, and don't be afraid to dream big. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Our next commendation is from Supervisor from District 1, Supervisor Eric Marr. And before I recognize Supervisor Marr, I'd just like to acknowledge former Supervisor Amos Brown is here with us today. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you. I wanted to say that it's a historic moment in this chambers that we're joined by a woman, an amazing leader all the way from Seoul, Korea, that has an example of courage and a story of breaking silence over generations. She's an example of a growing movement led by women's organizations in Korea and Japan and in this country, in the U.S., for justice and for empathy for hundreds of thousands of girls and women that were kidnapped, coerced into sexual slavery by the Japanese Imperial Army from 1932 to 1945. It's about justice. It's about empathy. I wanted to ask if our honoree can come forward, but also acknowledge that we're joined by Judges Lillian Singh and Judge Julie Tang, who are flanking her. We're also joined by Phyllis Kim from the Korean American Forum, and she'll be translating. The leader that we are here honoring today is Ms. Young-soo Lee, more commonly and respectfully known as Grandma Lee. Colleagues, this is historic because she's an amazing, courageous person showing perseverance as a survivor of the World War II Japanese Imperial Army's so-called comfort stations. She represents and embodies a fighting spirit of women's movements in the Pacific and in Asia and in this country that are leading the struggle for justice. And she's been leading it for about 20 years since she broke her silence along with other courageous women. Grandma Lee was born in 1928 near Daegu, Korea. She was 15 years old, the age of my daughter as well, my Japanese and Chinese American daughter, Jade. But Grandma Lee was 15 years old when she was lured out of her home in the middle of the night. She was taken to a quote-unquote comfort station for a kamikaze unit in Taiwan, in the Japanese-controlled Taiwan. She returned after the war and lived in silence. She lived in silence until 1992, when she registered with the Korean government as a victim of the Japanese military sexual slavery. Tremendously courageous person. She initially thought what happened to her was an isolated incident, but soon realized so many other women, well over 200,000, were subject to the same horrors that she went through. I think some say the average was 10 to 20 rapes of people per day. That's like 50 to 100 per week. If you think about it per year, just the suffering and the horrors. Since then, Grandma Lee has become a leader and an activist in the movement to demand an official apology and government reparations from the Japanese government. Grandma Lee was one of the 3 survivors that testified before the U.S. Congress, and thank you so much to Congressman Mike Honda as well, and the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Subcommittee on Asia, the Pacific, and the Global Environment in 2007. Grandma Lee embodies courage and determination. She's making numerous trips around the globe, including Japan and to the U.S., to attend events, give talks, and raise public awareness about the so-called comfort women issue, justice for comfort women. I like to say that our Justice for Comfort Women Coalition is growing because of the courage of Grandma Lee and so many others that are here with us today. She's getting around at the age of 87 much more actively than many of us to speak and to raise awareness, to pressure the Japanese government to formally apologize. She lives in Daegu, Korea. My office is working with the Justice for Comfort Women Coalition to arrange for Thursday's press conference at 1. 2 p.m. is a committee meeting of the Public Safety Committee that Supervisors Christensen, Campos, and I sit on. She's also meeting with the mayor later today, I believe. Also, Grace Yu, professor from SF State, has her, and there's a Rape of Nanjing Redress Coalition banquet and many other events that she's attending. On behalf of the Justice for Comfort Women Coalition, I wanted to ask if those that are in the audience could stand from the Rape of Nanjing Coalition and the Justice for Comfort Women Coalition, just stand in solidarity as we thank Grandma Lee for being here and to give her remarks. Thank you.
President Breed.
네, 여러분 안녕하십니까? 역사의 산증은 이용수입니다.
Hello everyone. My name is Yong-Soo Lee. I am the living evidence of history.
여러분, 아름다운 샌프란시스코 왔습니다. 저 하늘 풀어주세요. 여러분들이 꼭 이 아름다운 샌프란시스코에 손상을 치우고 해주세요. 간절히 바랍니다.
I came to this beautiful San Francisco to meet with you, and I want to ask you with my deepest bottom of my heart that please let me get rid of my sadness in my heart by erecting a memorial in this beautiful city of San Francisco.
여러분, 직구문은 제가 역사에 산 증언이지만은 세계 여성들을 위해서 저는 여성 인권자로서 해결사로서 꼭 나서서 이 문제 해결을 세계 여성들을 위해서 저는 노력하겠습니다.
I came here as the witness of the history, but now I am more than that. I came here as an activist who is trying to resolve the history for the sake of all women's rights of the world. And for the sake of the women around the world, I am determined to resolve this problem.
샌프란시스코 여러분들 존경하고 사랑합니다. 꼭 소녀상을 샌프란시스코에서 꼭 씌워주기를 바랍니다. 부탁드립니다. 고맙습니다.
All of you in San Francisco, I give you my respect and love, and I sincerely ask you to erect a memorial in San Francisco. I am very grateful. Thank you.
꼭 부탁드립니다. 여러분 사랑합니다.
I love you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, and Supervisor Marr, Thank you. So at this time, Supervisor Kim will say a few words.
First of all, I just want to Harmony Lee. I just wanted to say a couple of my own words as well. I grew up. My parents immigrated from Korea to the U.S. in the 1970s, and I grew up in my childhood hearing stories about the occupation, the war, and the story of women and young girls that were taken from their homes to serve as sexual slaves for the Japanese military. These were stories that I grew up hearing from so many women in my family who were fearful that they could have been one of the victims as well. And I just want to thank you so much for what you were doing. The greatest revolutionary act that you can give is not just to survive, but to survive and tell your story. And the experience and the stories are humiliating and so challenging to hear, and I know even more challenging to tell the public and share your experience. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your leadership and courage. It is so important that we not only know our history, but we remember these stories so that they won't happen again. And I think that your contribution to women and girls across the world that are victimized is so incredibly important, and that we cannot rest until we end this type of violence against girls and women. So thank you again. 많이 감사합니다. 죄를 사랑해요.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim.
Judges Singh and Tang, would you join us? Phyllis?
Please.
Let me give that to you. Okay.
Amos.
Can you guys please do it?
Amos Brown.
Get it there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Amos Brown. Hold on. Wait.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Amos.
Join us.
I'm fine. I know, you're fine.
수고했습니다. 비행기도 월요일도 있고요. I know, I heard.
Okay, thank you to the paparazzi, and we will now turn to the regular business of the Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk, can you please go to item number 9?
Item 9 is an ordinance to levy property taxes at a combined rate of 1.1826 on each 100 valuation of taxable property for the San Francisco Unified School District, the Community College District, the Bay Area Rapid Transit District, and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and to establish a pass-through rate of 0.0920 per $100 of assessed value for residential tenants.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 9, Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell? Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr?
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos? Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Okay, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. And as members of the public exit the chamber, can you please do so quietly? We still have business to conduct. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, can you please read the next item?
Item 10 is an ordinance to waive banner fees under Public Works Code Section 184.78 for up to 25 banners to be placed by the Abraham Lincoln High School to publicize its 75th anniversary celebration gala.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this ordinance is passed unanimously on the first reading. Madam Clerk, item 11.
Item 11 is a resolution to retroactively approve Amendment Number 1 to a Terminal 3 news and specialty store lease between Hudson Group Retail and the city for relocation of another concession space and reduction of the minimum annual guarantee of the rent of approximately $555,000 beginning on July 1st, 2015.
Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On item 11, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr? Marr, absent. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 10 ayes.
Okay, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 12, please.
Item 12, resolution to retroactively authorize the Office of the District Attorney to accept and expend a grant in the amount of approximately $2.1 million from the California Victim Compensation and Government Claims Board for a project entitled Compensation for Crime Victims for the period July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018.
Roll call vote.
On item 12, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell. Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr.
Aye.
Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener.
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos. Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen.
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
This resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 13.
Item 13, resolution to approve an emergency public work contract with Cone, Inc. to renovate and upgrade the elevators at 170 Otis Street for a not-to-exceed amount of approximately $460,000.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 14, resolution to authorize the general manager of the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission to negotiate and execute a 25-year lease to Mission Valley Rock Company for approximately 199 acres in Sonoma, California for water use and management, aggregate conveyance, overburden and fines placement, and reclamation for an initial annual rental rate of $60,000 plus 4% annual rent increases.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you read items 15 through 19?
Items 15 through 19 are 5 resolutions that approve amendments or a modification to the various leases between the Treasure Island Development Authority and the United States Navy to extend the term for 1 year for the period of December 1st, 2015 through November 30th, 2016. Item 15 is Amendment 40 to the Treasure Island Land and Structures Master Lease. Item 16 is Amendment Number 31 to the Treasure Island South Waterfront Master Lease. 17 is the amendment number 19 to the Treasure Island Marina Master Lease. Item 18 is amendment number 11 to the Treasure Island Child Care Master Lease. And item 19 is a modification of the cooperative agreement to extend the term from October 1st, 2015 until the earlier of the termination of the conveyance agreement executed between the Navy and the Authority, or the date that all parcels at the former Naval Station Treasure Island are conveyed.
Okay, seeing no names on the roster, colleagues, can we take these items, same house, same call? Without objection, these resolutions are adopted unanimously. Item 20, please.
Item 20, resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Public Health's Behavioral Health Services to enter into an amended multi-year contract for substance use disorder services with the State Department of Healthcare Services in the approximate amount of $40.4 million from July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2017.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Item 21.
Item 21 is a resolution to retroactively authorize the Department of Public Health to accept and expend gifts from Dr. Milka Rolls to the Laguna Honda Hospital and Rehabilitation Center Resident Gift Fund in the amount of $400,000 from July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2035, and $100,000 to the Development Fund for Quality Improvement Education and Training, July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2025.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 22, resolution to authorize the Department of Public Health to receive federal and state funding for certain non-infrastructure transportation projects through the Department of Transportation and to delegate authorization to execute these agreements and any amendments to the Director of the Department of Public Health.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item, please.
Item 23, resolution to retroactively authorize the Recreation and Park Department to accept and expend a grant in place from the Trust for Public Land for improvements to the Buchanan Street Mall, valued at approximately $188,000, April 7th, 2015 through October 31st, 2015.
Same house, same call. Without objection, this resolution is adopted unanimously. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we go to our committee report?
Item 24 was considered by the Rules Committee at a regular meeting on Thursday, September 10th. It was forwarded as a committee report. It was recommended as amended with a new title. Item 24 now reads, Motion to approve the mayor's reappointment of Bryant Tan to the Entertainment Commission, term ending July 1st, 2019.
Okay, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, this motion is approved unanimously. Okay, let's go to roll call for introductions.
The first supervisor up to introduce new business is Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I submit.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, so I have two items today. First of all is an item that I am co-sponsoring and Mayor Lee is sponsoring around our inclusionary housing program. So without a doubt, obviously our most pressing issue we continue to talk about inside of City Hall is around our housing shortage and crisis and affordability issues. We've been doing a lot to create new housing, preserve existing rent control and affordable units, rehabilitate thousands of public housing units, and stop displacement. A number of us came together over the past year plus to participate in the Mayor's Housing Working Group that he convened at the beginning of last year. And we work with a group of folks, including our staffs, affordable housing advocates, affordable housing developers, experts, market rate developers, community leaders, and the list goes on. And as a result of these meetings and a lot of back and forth between stakeholders, we arrived at today what I'm very much supporting in introducing the most substantive updates and reforms to our city's inclusionary housing program since it was first created. So today, Mayor Lee formally introduced these amendments that include a number of items. The first is the creation of an inclusionary dial, which adds an option to allow a project sponsor to increase the targeted pricing of on or off-site units in exchange for providing more units. For rental units, sponsors will be able to dial up to 90% AMI, and for ownership units up to 120% AMI, all in exchange for producing a greater number of permanently affordable units in the development. Personally was a particularly strong proponent of creating this inclusionary dial because it does provide an incentive to develop more on-site affordable housing. Our housing crisis exists today. Obviously, it's being felt in each one of our neighborhoods. And to the extent that we're able to encourage on-site housing being built and affordable housing being built, that's going to affect today's situation. In addition, there was an addition of a small sites alternative where developers of small projects will have the option to direct their fee toward the acquisition of rental buildings at risk of conversion to market rate in the neighborhood of the principal project. There's also strengthening the off-site alternative, which will allow developers will have the project be located within 1.5 miles of the market rate project or within the same planning department defined neighborhood. This allows for more time for an off-site project to be completed since there's difficulty in obtaining all of the permits. Our residents expect that we continue to work on this housing issue. I do believe, as we all do, that producing more affordable housing is one of the key things that we must focus on here in City Hall. To me, these are common sense reforms, overdue reforms, to be quite frank, and I'm glad that after over a year of working together, we've introduced them. I do want to thank a number of people, in particular from the mayor's staff, that have been working on this. First and foremost, Jeff Buckley, his senior housing advisor, and all of the mayor's also his housing staff and planning staff, including Sophie Hayward, Chandra Egan, Kirsten Dischinger, and everybody else who participate in these working groups. The second item I'm introducing today is something I mentioned earlier in the summer, and that is around our gun control legislation and policies here in San Francisco. So easy access, obviously, to firearms continues to be a contributing factor to senseless violence, not only here in San Francisco, but across our country. And even though we have some of the toughest gun control laws here in our city and our state, there still remains more that we can do in terms of public safety, because there are gaps in our federal and state legislation that San Francisco has yet to address, and that a number of other counties in San Francisco have already taken advantage of. So that's why today I'm introducing legislation that would require the videotaping of all gun and ammunition sales within San Francisco and require the regular storage and electronic transmission of ammunition sales data and transfers to the San Francisco Police Department. I want to particularly thank Supervisor Cohen, who's been a strong leader in proposing gun control reforms and co-sponsoring this package with me. It is intended to fill those gaps that exist at the federal and state level and enhance public safety in order to keep all of our neighborhoods safe. I do believe we need to do everything in our power here inside of City Hall. As I believe many of us hear from our residents all the time about public safety concerns, whether it be quality of life crimes in our neighborhoods or violent crimes that happen on our streets as well. Obviously, we can't go out and patrol the streets, but what we can do inside of City Hall is equally as important, and I do believe we need to continue to press forward on this. So the first portion of the legislation would require the videotaping of all gun and ammunition sales that take place within San Francisco. Would also apply to other critical areas of the business premises, including all places where firearms or ammunition are stored, handled, sold, or transferred or carried, such as in back rooms, including counters and safes, vaults, and so forth. Currently, no federal or California law imposes security requirements on firearms dealers during business hours or requires firearms dealers or ammunition sellers to install burglar alarms or surveillance cameras. Simply having this evidence of all gun sales and all gun handling, essentially, within these stores will hopefully help deter those from buying guns and ammunition who are prohibited from law. And as with both of these items, it will give our law enforcement personnel additional data and resources and tools in order to prosecute crimes and investigate them as well. The second portion would require the electronic transmission of ammunition sales data and transfers weekly to the San Francisco Police Department. The SFPD is going to be responsible for crafting these forms. Over a dozen local jurisdictions in California have already adopted ordinances requiring similar electronic transmission, and San Francisco just simply currently does not have anything similar in place. I do think the goals here are pretty simple and straightforward. It's to ensure that dealers that operate within our city limits today and tomorrow do so in a manner that's not detrimental to public safety in our streets, to prevent and deter illegal trafficking, to prevent the loss and theft of firearms, and to make sure that our San Francisco Police Department continues to have all the tools available to continue to enforce our public safety in our neighborhoods. Hopefully, this package will continue to aid in that progress to deter violence in our neighborhoods and on our streets. and stop people from getting easy access to guns and ammunition here within our city limits. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion on inclusionary reforms. I'm curious as to how looking at reducing developer obligations will build more affordable housing for our city. Today, I am making a request to our Controller's Office to study and develop a range of options for a citywide public toilet program expanding upon the successful Tenderloin and South of Market Pit Stop program, which our office piloted with the Public Works in the summer of 2014. The critical component of what has made this pilot so successful is the regular maintenance and monitoring only possible with staffing of our public toilet program. My first 2 years in office, I heard over and over again from our residents in the Tenderloin that we needed more public restrooms, not just the green J.C. Deco bathrooms that were often utilized not for bathroom purposes, but often became magnets for dangerous and criminal activities. Our residents wanted to see options for individuals without access to clean and safe public toilets that would prevent them from being forced to urinate or defecate on our streets, often something that we hear about. We continue to, of course, hear this throughout the city. Over the 2 years, we worked closely with Director Mohammed Nuru and Public Works to develop a public restroom program that would be clean and accessible and wouldn't fall into the same trappings that we've seen other public restrooms fall into, which was that they were underutilized or were perceived as dangerous places. So last summer, we were able to launch 3 pit stops in District 6. And over the year, the data that we have collected has shown that they are a tremendous success. On average, every day, almost 100 people use the 3 pit stops in the Tenderloin. In July of 2015 alone, these 3 pit stops were utilized 4,500 times. And we're noticing that there is a tremendous increase, even over the last 2 months, in the usage of our pit stop. And an example of one that I will share, which is on Ellis, right across from Glide Church. In May, we saw 1,235 uses of one of the pit stops. It already grew to 1,618 by July. So not only are these programs successful, they're being increasingly utilized as people grow to trust them and grow to learn from them. In the first 6 months, we found that we were already saving over 2,400 gallons of water per month just with these 3 pit stops alone. And it led to a reduction in steam cleaning requests in the neighborhood by over 60% reduction in steam cleaning requests. These facilities have made our streets cleaner, and we've collected over 120 bags of garbages just in these 3 sites alone. I want to thank and recognize my colleagues for unanimously approving my budget request to make the pit stop permanent in January of this year and expanding a 4th location in the South of Market on 6th Street. Over the last month, this program has now expanded to Supervisor David Campos' district on Mission and 16th, and 2 more pit stops in our district on Mid-Market and Civic Center. Even in the last 2 weeks, we're seeing now utilizing one of the J.C. Deco bathrooms that the number of flushes in these toilets are almost tripling in usage, meaning that more people are feeling safe and comfortable using these restrooms because they are monitored and clean on a regular basis. We, however, know that this is a citywide issue. This isn't limited just to District 6 or District 9. We are hearing across the city that not only do we need more places for all members of the public, whether they are tourists, families that are shopping at our UN farmers market, vendors that are on the street that also aren't able to access restrooms throughout the day, but of course for our individuals that call the streets their home and really have nowhere else to go. This is something that can be utilized throughout the city to provide dignity for all of our residents, but also make our streets cleaner for everyone. I live in the South of Market. I walk to work many days, and there are not many days when I don't see examples of this or have to step over it. And I think this is something that our city can address with financial support. So today I am asking the Controller's Office to examine the geographic need based on 311 and Public Works data, propose locations throughout the city, including existing resources that we can utilize, whether they are the J.C. Decode green toilets or rec and parks facilities, and examine alternatives like the innovative pit stops and even citizen-proposed concepts like the pea planters that were demonstrated at our prototyping festival on Market Street a few months ago. I'm making this request with Supervisor Campos and Avalos. Access to public restrooms is a basic human necessity. No one can stop going to the bathroom. That's just not a bodily function that we can control, and we should not blame individuals on the streets for having to urinate or defecate on the streets. But we as a city also deserve to live and work in a city where we can walk down the streets without stepping over feces or smelling urine as we go to work, as we go home, or as we continue to enjoy our city. A program like this can be expanded. We want to look at the resources that it will take to implement it successfully throughout our city, and we look forward to having a hearing on this item in the next couple of weeks. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Marr.
Thank you, colleagues. I have several items on hunger, peace, and the Valley fires. I'm really hungry right now. We're in the middle of the Hunger Action Month, and this week a number of community leaders, interfaith leaders are going through the SNAP Challenge, or we also call it the Hunger Challenge, trying to live off $4.72 per day. But I only have to deal with this for a week. There's 42,000 San Franciscans that live off of food stamps every day. There's 1 in 4 San Franciscans that are at risk for food insecurity based on our budget analyst report that we did 2 years ago. I wanted to thank the San Francisco Marin Food Bank for challenging us. I wanted to thank Project Open Hand for requiring the leadership of their organization to go through this at least week-long experience. I'm living off extremely tight food budget, oatmeal, rice and beans. A positive thing is cooking more at home with my daughter, and I think that's a benefit of building community and family, but I'm hungry right now. By the time I did this last year, and I know that my brain stops working by about 3 p.m., I go to bed hungry like many seniors and families do every day, every night, and it's a good experience for policymakers like me to do this. I wanted to say, too, that right now the CalFresh SNAP benefit is about $4.72 a day. And although I realize that this, for me, is only a simulated experience, it's not the same when I can go back to my regular habits at the end of the week. But I still see a value of shifting my own perspective on the issues as the Budget Committee deals with food insecurity and our city's budget, and really helping to ease the suffering that many people have every day. Together, I think, with the Food Security Task Force, the Tenderloin Healthy Corner Store Coalition, and many others, we can raise awareness and mobilize our public to end hunger in San Francisco. We, as a board, passed a resolution to end hunger, to significantly end it by 2020. We're trying to do that at the Budget Committee, but we need everybody to help us do that. For more information and a suggestion of how to survive off $4.50, $4.71, $72 per day, go to sfmfoodbank.org, Hunger Challenge 2015. It's really opening my eyes and my stomach right now as well. I wanted to say also that I'm helping to support an amazing event on September 19th on Saturday. It's a 3rd annual Peace in the Park Festival in Golden Gate Park in District 1, the Richmond District. Peace in the Park brings together the diverse San Francisco and surrounding communities to unplug and explore activities of peace, joy, and happiness in a fun, inspiring, and healthy atmosphere. The festival was created in response to the growing concern that we are an overstimulated, ADD-afflicted, and I'll have to admit openly that I have ADD, but we're an ADD-afflicted and tech-saturated culture. In 2014, we had 2,000 attendees in the first year and 2,000 attendees 2 years ago and 5,000 last year at the festival. And we'll feature world music, visual artists, Tai Chi, Hatha Yoga, life changer seminars, arts, crafts exhibits, and local nonprofits, and a lot of meditation examples. And it's at the majestic bandshell in Golden Gate Park. And the event demonstrates how to nurture peace and happiness even while living in a fast-paced urban environment. If you come with us, you'll be among some of the best artists, scientists, peacemakers, and policymakers in the Bay Area at this event. The festival is offered free of charge by a coalition including Brahma Kumaris, SF Parks Alliance, Institute for Noetic Sciences, United Religions Initiative, Creative Canopy, Interfaith Center at the Presidio, and Yoga Tree of San Francisco. For more information, go to peaceintheparksf.org. And lastly, as many people know, thousands of lives have been disrupted and touched by the Valley Fire that's raging in Napa and Lake counties. To date, 585 homes have been destroyed by the fire, and hundreds of other structures are known to have been destroyed as well. The losses up there include the home of my friend and former aide, Peter Lauterborn's parents. Many of those affected have lost everything. There are various ways to help by providing financial assistance. To give to the California Fire Foundation, go to www.cafirefoundation.org. I wanted to say personally that I know how devastating home fires can be. In 2000, I lost my home and all of my family's belongings to a fire in the Richmond district, and my heart goes out to all of the families and residents struggling to get back on their feet. Tri-Counties Bank has also set up an account to benefit the victims of the Valley Fire. Anyone who would like to donate can visit any branch of Tri-Counties Bank and make a deposit to the Valley Fire Relief Fund. The funds will be distributed to people in need through local nonprofit emergency relief agencies. And the Salvation Army is also accepting monetary donations. You can donate online or call 1-800-SAL-ARMY and select Northern California Fires. Thank you. The rest I'll submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Marr. With permission, Supervisor Tang, Supervisor Kim wished to speak to the hunger challenge.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kim.
I want to thank Supervisor Marr for taking the leadership of taking up the Hunger Challenge last year. My office, including myself, have joined the Hunger Challenge as well. I have been participating since yesterday, and my entire staff, including their families and 3 children, are also participating as well. And I do agree with you that it is a really important challenge for policymakers to take on. It would have been very easy for me to eat Spam and ramen all week, but I'm really committed to our Healthy Corner Store program and food justice program in the Tenderloin, and because of that I'm shopping locally at our local corner stores and figuring out how I can stretch my budget of $4.50 a day, which is something that many of our residents are doing here in the city, and want to thank you for doing that, and that we want to continue to work on this very important issue, and want to recognize the food bank who is leading this challenge this year.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you very much. Today I'm just introducing a resolution that would recognize September 17th as Constitution Day and Citizenship Day in San Francisco. And I know that many of us come from families where our parents have immigrated to the United States for better opportunities, and very proud that San Francisco has always welcomed our immigrant community with open arms. So in September 17th, 1787, it was the signing of the U.S. Constitution, and so Congress has designated September 17th as Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. Back in 2013, our city had launched a San Francisco Pathways to Citizenship initiative, and since then, we have actually reached over 1 million Bay Area residents. We have assisted thousands of applicants for citizenship with their application forms and trained over 500 volunteers. And so moving forward, just want to take some time to recognize and celebrate September 17th then as Constitution and Citizenship Day here in San Francisco. And with that, I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Wiener.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today I'm introducing legislation to expedite the approval process for affordable housing, specifically to eliminate the conditional use requirement for any affordable housing project that contains 100% affordable units. I think all agree that we need significantly more affordable housing in San Francisco, but it takes way, way, way too long to get affordable housing projects approved in this city. And the conditional use project, which is the conditional use process, which is a very useful process in many contexts, in the context of getting affordable housing built, can at times delay these projects by a year or more, adding significant expense as well. And we have seen projects that have been delayed through the conditional use process. It's just not it's not the best way to proceed, and we need more affordable housing, and it takes way too long to get affordable housing built in this city. The legislation will also make it easier to use publicly owned land other than park space or open space to build affordable housing by eliminating the requirement that publicly owned land be rezoned in order to create affordable housing. And again, this entire legislation applies only to projects that are affordable housing 100%, meaning all the units are affordable housing, to people making somewhere between 0 and 120% of area median income. So I look forward to discussion about this and other ways that we can build more affordable housing and make it easier, faster, and less expensive to do so. I also will be joining Supervisor Yee in memoriam for Remy Everett, who was, until she passed suddenly and tragically, was the principal at St. Philip's in Noe Valley, a school that has been there for many, many years. It's a real institution in the community, and she was someone who was really beloved by the school community and by the neighborhood. And I know that people are in shock that she's gone, and we will all miss her dearly. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Wiener. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So, colleagues, I would like to adjourn today's meeting in memory of the principal of St. Philip's School in Noe Valley, Remy Everett. She was the principal of two of my staff, Olivia Scannon's children, and she would be sorely missed. Mrs. Everett passed away unexpectedly this weekend. Nobody really expected this, and she's someone that has dedicated her life, 40 years of her life, tirelessly to education. She was a loving, caring person and always made time to get to know each student. Ms. Everett will be missed so much within the St. Philip's community, and our thoughts are with her husband, John, and her two daughters, Charisse and Kathy. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Avalos. Supervisor Breed.
Thank you. I have one in memoriam for Mrs. Cara Lee. I want to acknowledge the passing of Ms. Cara Lee, who peacefully passed away on September 4th, 2015, with her former husband, Mel Lee, and her family by her side. A San Francisco native, Mrs. Lee was born on December 5th, 1941, to the parents of Jim Alfo Jan and Mary Ko Lin Zhang. Mrs. Lee dedicated her life to serving the public by working as an intake nurse at the California Pacific Medical Center for her whole career until she retired in 2007. Outside of work, Mrs. Lee was athletically and artistically talented. She enjoyed playing tennis and riding on horseback. She also had a gift for watercolor painting, and she liked to paint fruits, flowers, and vegetables, but her signature piece of work was bok choy. A loving mother, Mrs. Lee is succeeded by her three children, Preston, Angela, and Mitchell, and her three grandchildren, Skylar, Maxwell, and Maribel. She will be truly missed, and the rest I submit.
Thank you, Madam President. Supervisor Campos.
Submit.
Okay. Supervisor Christensen.
Submit.
Madam President, seeing no other names on the roster, that concludes the introduction of new business.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And at this time, can you please read public comment?
The public may address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the minutes, the items on the adoption without reference to committee calendar, items 27 through 29. Public comment is not allowed when an item has previously been subject to public comment at a Board committee, as is the case with the item on the consent, unfinished business, and the committee report. Items 1 through 24. Pursuant to the Board's rules of order, direct your remarks to the Board as a whole, not to individual supervisors and nor to the audience. Speakers using translation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time to testify. And if you would like to display a document on the overhead projector, please clearly state such to SFG TV and remove the document when the screen should return to live coverage of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. First speaker, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board. I'm Rabbi Doug Kahn, Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council, pleased to speak on behalf of the organized Jewish community for the memorial to the Comfort Women, honored to be a member of the coalition. We believe in the importance of memory. If we do not capture this important chapter now, as we have reached 70 years after the end of World War II, it will only be confined to obscure history books. We as a community believe in the importance of not being complacent about the evil of human trafficking at a time when this issue looms large globally, and the memorial has just such a universal message. We believe in honoring the survivors while they are still alive, and we believe in the importance of reconciliation, believing that memorials can help in that process. San Francisco's Holocaust Memorial was established more than 30 years ago after Mayor Feinstein appointed a committee. I was privileged to staff that committee to erect the memorial at Lincoln Park. And as with this memorial, this one will do precisely the same in honoring memory and shining a light on unspeakable crimes against humanity so that lessons can be learned for the future, in honoring the survivors in our midst, and in serving as an opportunity for reconciliation. In short, the effort to establish a monument to the Comfort Women resonates deeply for the Jewish community, and this is why the JCRC and our community is proud to support this important memorial that has both particularistic and universal meaning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
I'll pick that up. I like to use the overhead. Oh no, I don't know. I haven't started yet.
Madam Clerk, can you start the time, please?
I'm here concerning my son, Aubrey Abercasa, who was murdered August 14, 2006, to a semi-automatic gun. 30 rounds of bullets left that gun. And to my son, we just recently got through rallying right here in front of City Hall, mothers demanding action for unsolved homicides. I've been doing this for 9 years. August 14 would have been 9 years since my son been murdered. Still no justice, still no closure. We want to bring awareness to these unsolved homicides so that mothers like myself can heal, can have some closure. We have no closure. I want to bring awareness too, also, that firearms are the third leading killers of our children, ages 1 through 17. Firearms. How many firearms are we going to let come here for people to get a hold of and go and commit senseless violence like this among our children? We need to stop these shops from opening, Big Five and all of them that are carrying these guns for people to go and shop and get these guns. And people are selling guns out of the trunk of their car to people with mental health to go and kill our children. Like I said, I'm not only here about my child. We have other mothers and fathers that are suffering in silence concerning their children. These are all unsolved homicides, and something needs to be done about it. We don't need to be left with this, what I have to look at every day, and what I have to think about every day concerning my son. And this is something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. I shouldn't have to stand out in front of City Hall and fight for my child.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Next speaker, please.
The overhead, please. Supervisors, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government, and I showed you this list last week, 24 wins. And I don't need to tell the members of this Board of Supervisors how hard it was to win 24 times. And the public should be made aware of the extreme measures that you as a body and individual supervisors have made to sabotage the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. Let's start the next 6 months to a year discussing some of these. And let's start with the case of your president, London Breed. I made a public records request which the supervisor and her staff knowingly and willfully ignored. A lawful request under both the Sunshine Ordinance and the California Public Records Act. Supervisor Breed didn't respond to me, didn't respond to the task force, didn't even send anybody to the hearing. After months, her representative, Connor Johnston, appeared only to kvetch and moan about having to be there. He was dismissive both of me and the task force. Didn't give a damn that the supervisor had violated my rights under the law, just as these other 23 groups have done. I'm nobody special. So I believe they probably treat other citizens the same way. My opinion would be that her representative exhibits the same dismissive attitude toward the concepts of open government that your board supervisor does. Someone who, rather than setting this type of example, should be setting a positive example. And a couple more of you, which we'll talk about next week and the week after, have chosen to follow that example by being dismissive of the fact that the citizens have rights.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Thank you. Next speaker. Sir, your time is up. Your time is up. Next speaker, please.
There are no signs. Madam President, there's a board rule that does not allow signs in the chamber.
1 second. We have a speaker at this time. Sir.
Okay. Here is sitting 11 bandits, fascist bandits, and this is Jewish anti-Semite liner. For 2 years, 85 years old Jew, Holocaust survivor, sleeping on the street, homeless, because your bandit in number 12 is Edward Lee. You don't have right, not human right, not any right to put on the street a person without any reason. 85 years old Holocaust survivor, and you put him on the street for 2 years. Fascist. Bandit country, United States. Only fascist country could do it. Only Hitler did it in 1940. How long I will until you or somebody from you, Mark. By the way, you gave me 2 congratulations. 2, not 1, 2. And 2 gave me 1 Newsom and 1 Lee. And after this, you put me on the street. Fascist. I asked Jewish God to punish you, to give you kill.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Overhead, please. Overhead.
SF Gov TV, the overhead projector, please.
showing.
SFG TV, can you zoom out, please?
It's too close.
Sala, if you want to wait, we could figure it out so that we can zoom in on it and take the next speaker.
Oh, that's cool.
There you go.
Okay.
My name is Salah Hakuya Chandler, and my son and 3 other young boys were murdered January the 9th, the quadruple homicide that happened in Hayes Valley, and 8 months later, there is no arrest. Mind you, out of these 4 boys, it has not been 1 penny of a reward put on these young men's life. And I am outraged as a mother and in state of shock that when I spoke with Chief Sir the other day, I asked him what was going on with the arrest, and his words were, "Oh, that. Oh, that. And I'm here for another case," he said. And that let me know that it's not priority, as you claim, a high-profile case, and that nothing like this has happened in San Francisco. Yet we, as black mothers, are losing our children in mass numbers, and it's not being acknowledged. And I'm coming to this board is because something really needs to be done to comfort these mothers and families. We're suffering in high percentage, and much of the focus is on the dollars, but what do you expect us to do? We're asking that the mayor be contacted to demand an arrest because they do know who the killers are. They know the suspects, but they claim they have no witnesses. They arrested someone with a stolen car from Hearst, and they let them go. If it was your child, what would you do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Kanika Mawusi Lamont Jones. I've been a teacher for the San Francisco Unified School District for 38 to 40 years. I just retired July 31st. This is my grandson, who I was at UC Hospital and the first one to touch him as a midwife. This is obituary of my grandson with reference to the young lady who came before, who was murdered January 9th, 2015. 8 months and about 5 days. I was going to retire last year. My grandson told me, "Granny, please don't leave. Stay with the children till the end of the year." He didn't make it till the end, but I'm here right now. 8 months, they know who the persons are. I say, make an arrest. I have served the San Francisco Unified School District for 38 plus years, from high school at Washington High School, volunteering my services and working and touching all those children who've been in the San Francisco Unified School District from pre-K to 12th grade. I say, how long does it take? I say, make an arrest. My grandson, my firstborn, he has a brother left, 20 years old, who doesn't even want to come back to the house. He's into his spirituality. I'm a Hebrew for Yahweh Elohim. And I said, all lives matter. I don't want to have to touch anybody else. Sally and I, we've been here even before this happened to our children. I say, who murdered my grandson? I say, make an arrest.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, President Breed and other members of the cabal. My name is Christopher Dahl, and I live at 6th and Howard, 10 blocks, and less than 14 meters from sea level. I rise to comment on justice. Victor Hugo, whose work forms the basis of the show Les Miserables, seems to have been among the first to claim that justice for the oppressed is to be found in their crimes, because their oppressors are to bear the entire guilt for those crimes. He has said that if a soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. The guilty one is not he who commits the sins, but he who causes the darkness. I would give great weight to calling acts of revenge committed by the oppressed upon the oppressor acts of justice, even justifiable acts in a just war, but I could give no weight at all to arguing that crimes committed upon random passers-by, upon the innocent, upon the conveniently weak, are anything more than simple crimes. And when such crimes are committed upon neighbors, upon family, upon community, the destruction is even greater, the tragedy is more personal, and justice, if any, even more distant. We all have an internal executive which orders our actions. We do what we will to do and nothing else. We are all able to manage our impulses, whatever they may be, if that is what we choose to do. Thank you, President Breed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Please. After 32 years as a judge of the San Francisco Superior Court, I retired today so that I can speak before you about the Comfort Women resolution. I gave my career up so that I can speak about justice and peace. This resolution is not Japan bashing. It is holding Japan accountable. The argument against the resolution because other countries have also committed atrocities is absurd. If you follow that argument to the logical conclusion, you will end up doing nothing and holding no one accountable. Were other atrocities like black slavery included when gay rights or Harvey Milk Memorial was erected or the Jewish monument built? No. You cannot include every human rights violation when you remember a certain crime against humanity. When you talk about gay rights, you focus about gay rights. When you talk about this resolution, you focus on Japan's atrocities towards 200,000 women. It is not about all the sins of the world. The amendment about including other countries does not hold. The argument that this resolution will hurt Japanese Americans is simply wrong. Japanese Americans have done nothing to deserve such an association. Japan did what Japan did as a foreign government. Japanese Americans were victims. They should not be associated with that, and we will fight against any hate crimes against Japanese Americans because of this resolution. We are a multi-ethnic rights collaboration, including many Japanese Americans. Like all Americans, many Japanese Americans want to hold Japan accountable for its crimes against humanity. Karen Kuramatsu said, "My father, Fred Kuramatsu, went to jail because of the association."
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Judith Merkinson. I'm a longtime resident of the city of San Francisco and a member of the National Lawyers Guild. When I heard there was a controversy over the building of the memorial to the so-called comfort women, I was more than puzzled. So I decided yesterday to visit the Holocaust Memorial by the Legion of Honor. It's hard to find, but it's there. It was, by coincidence, very appropriate, as it is now Rosh Hashanah, one of our high holy days. As I stood there, I started thinking, although the memorial is very specific to the 6 million who perished during World War II, it also makes you think of Holocausts from time immemorial and what is happening to people today. In my mind, I also thought specifically about what's happening to Syrian migrants right now in Europe. What you also think about when you look at these kinds of memorials is about the people's humanity, how they lived, how they thought, and their lives that were taken away from them. Because that's what the Germans did. They took away our humanity, and we were less than animals. That's what happened to the comfort women. Their very humanity was taken away. They were just women to be used during war. They were sexually violated and then thrown away. We want to give that humanity back. We want to take back the shame that surrounded them and all women who were raped during war. Next week is Yom Kippur, our Day of the Dead and Atonement. What better way to atone? What better way to continue the healing process? than to listen to the voices of those comfort women and to say to the women of the world, never again.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. John DeDono from San Francisco. Human life should not be left at the mercy of a money-making business that can't provide housing for all. We are prisoners in our own apartments. One is afraid to complain because of fear of evictions, and an eviction is like a death sentence for many trying to live in the streets of San Francisco. No human being should have that kind of power over another. Maybe we should come to the realization that we can't always count on the free market to provide ample shelter for everyone that needs it. My landlord is one of the exceptions. I better say that. Anyway, I know this board is trying very hard. I need to recognize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is John Otime, and I'm here to speak in support of the Comfort Women Memorial. I am a Japanese American who grew up in San Francisco. I have been involved in many organizations and issues in the local Japanese American community for over 50 years. I worked actively as a member of the San Francisco chapter of the National Coalition for Redress and Reparations during the more than decades-long but ultimately successful movement to win a government apology and compensation for surviving Japanese Americans who were incarcerated by the U.S. government during World War II. I have heard that there are concerns that the Comfort Women Memorial may cause or contribute to Japan bashing or anti-Japanese sentiments. As a Japanese American, I think these concerns are completely unfounded. The resolution supporting the memorial clearly and accurately targets the Japanese militarists, not the Japanese people or Japanese Americans, as the perpetrators of the system of sexual slavery that the Comfort Women were subjected to. Instead of focusing on potential divisiveness, I think we should focus on the potential for building unity by bringing together diverse groups in a common pursuit of justice and human rights. We in the Japanese American Redress and Reparations movement would never have been successful without broad support, including Korean Americans, Filipino Americans, Chinese Americans, African Americans, Latinos, and Americans of all races. I think a San Francisco memorial to the Comfort Women can be an important step, a rallying point in building just such a rainbow alliance to win justice for the Comfort Women and ensure that what happened to them never is forgotten and never is repeated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Masaoka, and I'm co-chair of the Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress, formerly the National Coalition for Redress and Reparations, founded in 1980 to seek reparations for Japanese Americans incarcerated during World War II. We see this issue as an issue of human rights and of women's rights. We do not see this issue as one of the Comfort Women issue as one between countries, Japan, China, and Korea, but one between the Japanese government and the women, the Comfort Women. We support their call for apology and for reparations from the Japanese government. And unfortunately, just like our government had to give reparations to the U.S. government had to give reparations to the Japanese Americans and had to be accountable for what happened during World War II, so too Japan of today needs to be accountable for what World War II Japan did during that time to the Comfort Women. I wanted to share a couple of lessons. We have supported the Glendale statue in Los Angeles, and I wanted to share the experience that we had from that time in July 2013 and to dispel any thoughts that there was harassment or bullying of Japanese Americans in Los Angeles or Glendale. We called the police department of Glendale and found no reports of any kind of harassment or bullying. We, as an organization, have gotten no reports of that kind of those incidents as well. In addition, I spoke to the regional director of the Japanese American Citizens League, and she too had heard no reports. And our community is one that will hear reports and rumors of things like that. Instead, our experience has been one of being able to share with the Korean American community our history, and to be able to teach people who are maybe new to this country and don't know our history, and how we can work together. Education is something that our organization believes in, is continually needed, because people don't know the history of Japanese Americans or other immigrants here in this country, and that we need to share that history and the lessons of redress. So this is an opportunity to teach, to build unity, and to further justice. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for giving me and the others a platform to voice our opinions about the Comfort Women Resolution. What we're requesting to be memorialized is the memory of a singular, unique atrocity of a time of colonial rule and war that was marked by countless atrocities. Jugunrianfu, or comfort women, is a misnomer. It's like calling the victims of Auschwitz contract laborers. Bureaucratically administered, prolonged, systematic military gang rape victims would be more accurate. Now, there are those who would have you not approve this resolution. These are the denialists, the revisionists, the nationalists. They'll tell you what every perpetrator, what every rapist tells you. It was consensual. It was voluntary. They are exaggerating. They enjoyed it. They imagined it. It never happened. There's no evidence. The comfort women say, we are the evidence. Our bodies, our scars, our psyches are the truth. It was not consensual. It was a slaughterhouse. It was a living hell. It happened over and over and over again. San Francisco has a long history of respecting, even fighting for the rights of the oppressed, of being a beacon of justice and righteousness. I humbly beseech the supervisors in that tradition, in alignment with your policies, ethics, and values, to pass this proposal for our community, for our city, for the world, for universal conscience, for the defiled, the disrespected, to apportion a quantum of dignity and rectification so that the elders may pass on in dignity and grace without going to the...
Your time is up. Your time is up. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Michael Wong. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I was born, raised, and lived in San Francisco. The reason Veterans for Peace is involved in this issue and supports the memorial for the comfort women is because the peace movement in Japan reached out to us and asked us to come and speak in support of this resolution. Veterans have experienced not just the horrors of war, but also the healing that can come from speaking painful truths openly and from making restitution and admitting when wrongs were committed. Many Vietnam veterans of my generation have gone back to Vietnam, have met with former enemy soldiers, have met with civilians in the villages in which they operated, and have done work including donating time and money to Vietnamese orphanages, medical clinics, landmine removal, Agent Orange cleanup, and other projects to help the Vietnamese. The result has been very much healing between both them and the Vietnamese who suffered during the war. Healing is possible, but it can only happen when truth is spoken openly and sincerely, and action is taken to remedy some of the harm that was done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Phyllis Kim. I am with the Korean American Forum of California. You were just handed my response to the letter written by the mayor of Osaka, Mr. Hashimoto, and also you will find the testimony of the Dutch comfort woman, Jan Rafferhorn. I would like to give you a little bit of a perspective about this comfort woman movement in the United States because I have been involved in it since 2007. Since the first testimony came out in 1991, the victims and the supporters around the globe have been fighting to get just recognition and official apology and reparation from the Japanese government in the past 23 years. There always has been this struggle between the victims and the supporters who search for the justice and the history deniers who try to deny and silence those voices of these women. These deniers are not the Japanese citizens by and large. These deniers are not the Japanese Americans who live in America. These are the people, including the Prime Minister Abe and the ultra-nationalist small group of people who also have set $500 million in annual budget in order to fight this type of effort around the globe. So I ask the leaders of a beautiful city of San Francisco to make a defining moment in this movement to recognize the history in an accurate way so that people around the globe will look up to the city of San Francisco just like it has been doing in the past decades. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before I call the next speaker, Reverend Brown, would you like to come forward and speak?
Madam President, members of the board, I'm Amos Brown, President of the San Francisco branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And for us, color comes in all colors. I rise to say that Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays once said, if you can't think for yourself, someone else will do your thinking for you. And whoever does your thinking for you will be your master, and you their slave. I stand as a free thinker and president of NAACP and pastor of Third Baptist. I have looked at this matter. I have argued it in my mind. I've talked to some of you who serve in this august body. And I must say, let's think about it. The state of Texas some days ago wanted to do some redaction of history and to suggest the idea that slavery was not something that happened. And they tried to put it in economic terms. I feel that we would do a disservice to history and definitely do some redacting to suggest that what happened to these women was not real. It's like telling a woman who was raped that it didn't happen. I don't think we want to do that. I am standing in support of the statute, and I also would appeal to us to think clearly, to think logically. This is no blanket indictment of Japan. It's just permitting people to say, we deserve to be considered and to remember the pain that we felt.
Thank you, Reverend Brown.
Slavery was not real. And if we do the right thing, let each person who's been injured in the human family have their day in the sun and to say we deserve a memorial too.
Thank you, Reverend Brown. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Ken Kim. I come from Korean American Senior Center, located 745 Buchanan. Fortunately, that is Miss London Breed District number 5. I would like to ask you about supporting the resolution as your constituent who vote and reside in District 5. The Korean young woman and girl in World War II made up of a great majority of the comfort women who were induced, tricked, and trapped on the behalf of the Japanese military to become sex slave for Japanese soldiers. These young women and girls endured sexual assault and rapes multiple times every day in order for Japanese military to ascend into a soldier and maintain discipline among its rank and file. These events are hard to understand in a modern perspective, but they are historically truths that we should not forget all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam President, members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Joe Tomsick. I was born and reared in the city's Bayview District. Currently, I reside in District 7. I'm a product of immigrant grandparents who were proud to come to America from Yugoslavia, Slovenia specifically. They eventually settled in the East Bay and San Francisco. They were especially excited and proud to establish a meeting place in Potrero Hill called the Slovenian Hall, a place that exists and thrives today. As a result of their hard work and sacrifice, I was able to enjoy the city and all it had to offer. I am an attorney representing juvenile delinquents and children who are victims of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. I stand before you today in support of the board's resolution regarding a memorial to the Comfort Women and to urge your affirmation of this resolution. The city that knows how has blossomed from the days of my grandparents into an array of beautiful, diverse peoples and cultures. It has not been afraid to launch and even pioneer issues that other cities would never entertain. A statue in memory of the Comfort Women would be an asset to the whole community. The city graciously receives visitors from all over the globe. Everyone wants to come to San Francisco. They come to see its innate beauty, its unique neighborhoods, sample the best food in the world, see the natural and ever-changing scene on the bay, to name a few objects of their visit. With all the different statues and colorful artwork on the streets of the city, the addition of the statue in memory of the Comfort Women would only add to what this city stands for: justice, pride, confidence, character, hope, and love. It will be a place where all people can come and pay their respects, as with any other memorials of victims of war, disasters, or the like. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Scott. I teach at City College of San Francisco. I'm assuming that I'm speaking to the open-minded and already convinced, so I'll try to stay within your reasonable 2-minute limit today. My intent is not to bash Japan, as Judge Lillian Singh said, but to show my support for a very rational movement to enshrine the memorial to the women who suffered greatly. And Japan was not the only nation in history to commit this kind of sexual slavery, but it did it on a much larger scale than most other countries. I have a background in the Peace Corps and the Army and the labor movement, and I've been a teacher at City College for 40 years or more. And it's my view that the best way to right wrong is to seek forgiveness, to make amends, and I think this memorial is certainly in that tradition. It will be not just a monument or a memorial to gender equity, but to dignity and justice and for all women. Japan is a great country by many standards. The literacy rate is, and the longevity and the technological brilliance of Japan are exemplary. And the overwhelming majority of the people, Japanese people in my view, oppose both the Abe government's attempt to rescind the peace provision of the Constitution, and they also are critical of the union bashing and anti-worker initiatives. I believe that this statute will serve peace and reconciliation, and I believe that the Japanese people who are humane on this issue and want the government to make reparation, those are the true patriots, not the right-wing zealots. And I believe it's those people who will help lead Japan to its rightful place in the community.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Julie Tang. I'm a retired judge with 26 years on the bench. I'm only too familiar with victims of sex trafficking. I have arraigned hundreds of sex workers for the crime of solicitation for sex. I see firsthand the faces of sex workers and the evils of sex trafficking. I have never seen a happy sex worker, nor one who did not want a better life than what they had. The memorial is about them and about the largest victim of sex trafficking in World War II, that is the comfort woman in modern-day history. I want to urge the members of this board to support the resolution as written. I understand there's an amendment proposed. The purpose of the amendment is transparently clear: to deny the wrongdoing of the Japanese military and mitigate their culpability. The resolution tells an accurate historical account of what happened to the comfort women and why the resolution is necessary. If there's evidence that some other countries were involved in Japan's mastermind of the Comfort Women Institution during World War II, then cite it. But there isn't one thread of evidence to exonerate the Japanese military from such barbaric act towards the comfort women victims. Citing other people or countries' wrongdoing in other unrelated incidents does not excuse Japanese military's behavior during World War II, nor should it be a vehicle to make the Japanese military look better in its own crimes. Japan committed serious atrocities during World War II, one of which is the sexual enslavement of women and girls. Japan should be held accountable for its own crimes against women, apologize to the satisfaction of the victims so that the healing process may begin. Japan cannot try to hide behind other world's evils. The memorial is not about bashing Japan or Japanese Americans. It is about historical truth and a positive step towards peace and reconciliation. Let the monument be built. It is a first step towards peace planted in the soils of San Francisco. The comfort woman whose suffering is most emblematic of sexual exploitation of women and girls of the last century should be remembered.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Frank Martin del Campo, San Francisco Labor Council. I'd like to address three matters today. Two are the leadership that's provided today by Supervisor Marr and Supervisor Kim is very appreciated, and the issue of the comfort women and the courage that they have in raising the issues and demanding justice is something that we must all applaud and not fall for phony excuses to absolve culpability for those crimes. The second issue I would like to address is the disappearances of 43 students in Mexico. There was a resolution on this that addressed the issue about the Mexican government's investigation, right? A recent international review has determined that it was a bunch of you-know-what, the Mexican government. It's the same putrid bull that we face in Mexico and are so used to. The third issue is an objection to the treatment of our courageous sisters regarding the treatment of their children. I find it ironic that in a meeting that has been overwhelmingly addressed, the violence against women, right, the militarism, right, that here that we have grieving mothers and the amount of time and attention that is taken to address grieving mothers when we have these pressing issues. I believe that that's not correct to have hyper and overzealous efforts when the First Amendment is involved. There is absolutely no respect for the First Amendment, our right to protest here. If we protest, it's discouraged, as a gentleman in the second row saw. And so I'd like to appeal.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Tom Gilberti, 2000. It needs to be a very special monument. Next, if 60 white boys from high school were killed within this city, I think the police department would get on to it a little bit better than they're doing with our black lives. Next, binoculars. You see wonderful things through glass. Look for signs, see the horses run, sporting events, just wonderful things. I love glass. And here is something, the next time you go to a museum, take a small pair of opera glasses and then stand back from a painting and focus into the painting and stay within the frame, and you will see close to what an artist saw. And then you will enter another world, the world of that art, that painting, or the monument. The reason I say that, that's because it's a little strange. You're not going to see, you've never seen anybody with binoculars in a museum. It's thinking outside the box. Why is thinking outside the box important? Because our mayor said it in January, in February, and then in March. The three mayors on the KQED news program. They all three different mayors, San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco, thinking outside the box. And outside the box has gotten us jobs and growth and homes that 88% of San Francisco's can't afford. And the mayor is a little tardy in getting on the bandwagon here. But then it's a political moment, and he wants to come up with it. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. And Madam Clerk, can you please read the items for adoption without committee reference?
Items 27 through 29 are being considered for immediate adoption without committee reference. A single roll call vote may enact these items. A member may object, sever an item, and have it considered separately.
Seeing no members on the roster, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
On items 27 through 29, Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Farrell?
Aye.
Farrell, aye. Supervisor Kim? Kim, aye. Supervisor Marr? Marr, aye. Supervisor Tang?
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Wiener?
Aye.
Wiener, aye. Supervisor Yee?
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Avalos? Avalos, aye. Supervisor Breed?
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Campos?
Aye.
Campos, aye. Supervisor Christensen?
Aye.
Christensen, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, can you please read the in memoriams?
Yes, on behalf of Supervisor Yee for the late Rita O'Reilly, on behalf of Supervisor Yee and Supervisor Wiener for the late and principal of St. Philip's School, Remy Everett, on behalf of Supervisor Breed, Wiener, Yee, and Tang for Miss Cara Lee.
Okay. Madam Clerk, is there any other business before us?
That concludes our business for today.
Okay, this brings us to the end of our agenda. We are adjourned.